Say, did you ever notice that people who get the most fun out of life are the ones with a hobby? The hobby that's most popular with people in all walks of life is art. Well, this is a hobby that pays off in satisfaction or as a money-making career. And you do it all at home in your spare time.
From how to hold a pencil to how to get a job. The fundamentals of professional art.
This is another one of my favorites, Robert Fawcett. I have several of his books. This one's a really, really nice one and an overview of a lot of his work. And he was considered the Illustrator's illustrator, and you're going to see some wonderful examples in here. Just in the opening image, it gives you a good idea of his composition, control of light, really be rough, but yet all the information is very, very clear. One thing about these artists, I know their lives were busy. They didn't have the distractions that we do today with electronic, social media, and phones. Many of them you find when you look back at the history of many of these artists, mostly around the tri-state area of New York and Connecticut, because the publishing houses were in Manhattan. You could easily get on a train and go down to Manhattan, but you could always retreat back to your farm, have your studio with your north light coming in. Here's a great example of just his strength in roughness and sketch and line. I can squint and I can very easily see where the subjects are. Obviously, here's the beginning of the sketches, and even in his final, look how beautifully rough it is, but yet he's got perfect detail over the anatomy areas because he's such a strong artist. Another little small thing that I just like about these artists back at this time, many of them just happen to be living in mid-century modern homes, which again is another one of the things I really do enjoy. I think it's just a creative space. And this is his studio on the top of a hill in Connecticut overlooking his 65 acres. It's definitely a snapshot of a different time. Again, just a beautiful example of an ink wash. It's got its roughness, but it's got real clear light source. And whenever you're dealing with multiple characters, it's wonderful to see how they grouped. And that's something that I think a lot of people overlook in crowd illustrations, or if they're assigned to something that has a bunch of characters, really just working out the visual flow of what you're supposed to look at in the crowd. It's wonderful how clear Robert is right there. I believe that's a self-portrait of himself there. A lot of his illustrations were for magazines and books, and they had this wonderful ink wash to them. He would use a lot of dry brush, which was really, really nice, and just get in there and work some of these forms, and he'd use dry brush a lot, and it was just beautiful the way it kind of fell off in the less detailed areas. Just masterful illustration work and drawing. This is one of my favorite drawings in here. As an artist and someone who likes to sketch a lot and do rough drawings, this is just a beautiful collection of what feels like a quick sketch, hitting it with some dry brush, working very simple tones, but yet it's a very sophisticated drawing and really, really well done. From the little lines that may craft some of the cheekbone down to the whole area that is in shadow. But even in the shadow, I can feel the form through this dry brush, and you can feel the rounded nature of the muscles. Another excellent example of his masterful composition, straights and curves, and the way that he's just hitting the line art just so powerfully. Even in these softer ink washes, it's very, very clear what you're supposed to be looking at and where the contour shapes are. It's a challenge when you start getting into ink tones and washes and gray tones. Here's a great example of dark to light and just trying to really control those tones. And this is old school, this isn't digital. This is ink and gouache and just working those tones and working your way to the light where the audience is supposed to look. It's always wonderful to see where he's leaving your imagination or your mind to fill in the corner of the room. It's wonderful. There's no need for that line to be in there, and it just frames the subject so much better. Again, wonderful use of large shapes, negative space, and also he was just exquisite at doing fold language. This is excellent. I just love, again, really what feels like an alive sketch, where this is a sketch that's got color and life, and I think if you were to tie this down, you probably would lose a lot of the life that's in this sketch. And I love the use of the contrast. The wonderful white poles just frame them so well. And even though there's a lot of stuff going on, or it feels like there's a lot of stuff going on, it's very controlled. This is a nice little section here where they break down one of his drawings, and they pretty much go over some of the things I'm talking about, where his, yes, it's a rough sketch, but it's very controlled, and he really knew what he was drawing. The anatomy, the strength of the drawing of the feet and the foot and the bones, and then keeping things loose on the dry brush where it's not as important, almost as if he's controlling the focus of his own camera through the amount of information he's giving you in the line art. And this I thought was always interesting because, that could have been solid black, but if it's solid black, it loses a bit of energy. By giving it those lines, yes, it almost gives you more energy and action, but it's also representative of the palm fronds that the shelter's made out of. I love this close-up of Albert Dorn. I've talked about Albert Dorn before. He's one of my favorites as well, but these guys were friends, and I think he did this for his memorial. I love this ink work and the looseness of Albert Dorn's quintessential brows, but just really powerful, and you could feel the energy of Robert's drawing. Even a battle scene like that'd be so daunting for anyone to take on, and the energy of where he has the camera, the amount of information, what's going on, and the opposing forces, the setting itself is just phenomenal, even right down to this wonderful little framing. This piece is gorgeous. It's not as rough as the other work, but still maintains that Robert Fawcett roughness to it. But what I really love is the color palette. Not to mention the drawing is just phenomenal. The representation of the subjects and facial features on this guy here is just fantastic. The fold language on his jacket's amazing. But I love this color palette. It's a wonderfully subtle and simplified, very streamlined approach, and I've always been drawn to color palettes that are just simple. This is nice too. It's an idea of what he's thinking here with his original sketch and how he improved it and created some more negative space there. And she's a little bit more flat here, and by turning her and turning her head just makes it a little bit more interesting. Great strong pose here, just really, really strong pose. And even this, just this wonderful little subtleness of the contrasting hips and the pivot and the way that she's leaned back but just slightly tilted, just brings it all to life and makes it feel real. And this is just, loose, straight ahead, drawing it in, and it's wonderful. One of my books I have from him is signed. I got it really inexpensively. Just found it in a used bookstore. I think it was up in Maine. Again, I love the angles. He's thinking different camera lenses, an 18, a 25, a 35. This is a fantastic shot of depth, and the decision to get what's behind the counter from her feet all the way up. It's just very dynamic. Again, just a great angle, putting us in the audience. Amazing sketch down here. You can see where his tie down. Move the slippers over. Subtle changes, nothing major really. But just by moving the slippers over here to the final is really nice, because you start up here, kind of looks like Bill Murray. You start up here and you make your way down, as opposed to here. These are a little bit conflicting, and I'm sure as he's looking at it, he's thinking, let's just get those over there, because I really want to keep the focus on him. I know he did a lot of work for Hollywood, and he would do a lot of research, and I think there's a story in here somewhere where he found out that a Hollywood researcher was actually using the Illustrator's paintings for historical accuracy, and I think he found that to be pretty humorous. This is an excellent example of really awesome use of the page, and I'm sure the text was in here for the book. This is just a fantastic composition, beautifully laid out, right down to the way the sand points us to the direction that he wants us to look. And I love this little shape. Great clarity with posing and staging and just getting all the background information out of the way. It's funny how really, even though he was rough and he can go tight when he wanted to be, it's so interesting to see how some of his finished work really varies in levels of detail and finish. Just a fantastic layout, his thumbnail sketches, and again, a wonderful use. If you do anything in publishing, we do a lot of publishing, and another reason why I love to look at these old books is to see how they use the real estate of the page and where to put the text bodies, and really fantastic use of character and color and composition and just the blocking of the shapes. Boy, he was not afraid to really control the light. It's not easy to do something like that. You got to really be thinking all this stuff through, and it gets a little scary. Oh wow, I'm going to go all dark right there. Okay, I'm going for it. This is a wonderful top lighting from that lamppost is just fantastic. This book is so amazing. Again, I have other Robert Fawcett books, but when you see this much of his work in one place like this, it just blows you away. And he's doing all these, he's doing novels, he's doing crime novels, Agatha Christie. This is why Hollywood loved this guy. He's basically doing cinematography work in these paintings. And look at the lighting. Look at the uplighting. You know exactly what this mood is. And he's doing it with yellow. The primary color here is yellow, which is actually not my favorite color, but this looks amazing. Phenomenal work. This is the Sherlock Holmes series, so I think it just gave him really fantastic latitude to just really play with lighting and mystery and intrigue. And boy, did he work it. This is just phenomenal stuff. I mean, see an image like this, I want to know what's about to happen. There it is, the spider, which is really interesting because he makes you look for what they're looking at. You want to know what are they backing away from? The value is so similar when you squint. He wanted you to look for that. Look at that, and look at her pose. That looks like a dead body, the way that her right arm is twisted and her legs go in the other direction. This is representative of certain time periods, but his strength of drawing clothing is amazing. Probably would have been one of the most phenomenal fashion designers if he wanted to be. The way that he's using the garments even. Again, just even for the most complicated establishing shots, whenever I go through any of his books, I just want to draw. So just in closing, he's an amazing artist. If you didn't know about him, Robert Fawcett, check him out. There's several books out there, and he is the Illustrator's Illustrator.